everyone. Welcome. First episode. Welcome to Let's Talk About This Way. Before I start, I do have to say a couple things and a couple shout outs here. One, shout out to all my friends who I've been talking to about this. Your guys' support has been amazing, and I'm finally glad I'm doing this. Two would be to my amazing wife, Kelly, who is lending me her awesome camera to get this going. She's been awesome too in helping me out, get this all going and started. Probably my biggest supporter and encourager, so love ya. Also to my friend Jessie, who runs her own podcast called The Messy Podcast. You should be able to check that out. I'll have it in the details of the episode after I shoot this here. Jessie, appreciate your help and insight on getting a podcast started. And then to a good friend of mine, Herbie, who, spoiler alert, he's going to be our first guest of this show, actually, in next week's episode. He's been awesome. Big help and just like talking me through the actual vision coming to fruition. So I appreciate all of you, and let's get it kicked off. For some of you wondering, okay, what is this jacket that this man is wearing? I'm going to give this jacket a little power today. This was the jacket that I was wearing when I was on my walk after work, when I really said, hey, I'm going to do this podcast finally. Now, for you asking, how long has he been thinking about doing this podcast? A long time, a really long time. And as much as I wish I could tell you there was a specific reason to it, I kind of think it was just more laziness on my side and maybe just a bit of nervousness for sure. You know, actually doing this and talking to people out there listening to me. It's not like I'm talking to millions of listeners, but still, I didn't know if I had the time. And I thought at that specific moment when I was on my walk, it just felt good. Something told me it was time. So here we are, and I'm super excited and really happy I'm finally doing this. And then before we go a little deeper, my bad, forgot to shout them out. To the band Hannah, thank you guys. You guys have been awesome. Music's a big part of me, and so I wanted to make sure I instilled a little music into this podcast. So for me, intros and outros is the way to do it. I don't know if maybe later down the road we'll have a little music playing during the podcast for whatever reason. Maybe we'll have a musician on, which would be awesome. But for now, the intro and outro is done by the band Hannah, and they're awesome. Seriously, so great. Out of Simi Valley. Give them a listen. I'm also going to have their information on the episode details as well, and I think I've tagged them before. So thank you guys for letting me use your music. I really appreciate it, and I hope you guys get some more listeners out of this as well. All right. So I guess we'll just dive into what's the show going to be about. What is Let's Talk About This Way? Well, I'm a big believer in the power of speaking, the power of talking. And for a long time, I didn't realize how beneficial of a skill this was to have until later on in life. It kind of really came to me, right? I was really blessed and fortunate to be able to make a lot of friends, be able to build relationships with anyone out there. And that's just my love for people naturally. Obviously, that stems from my dad. And if any of you know my dad, he is the biggest social butterfly there is. Yeah, he is amazing. I feel like I really don't fall far from the tree on that one. That's for sure, on my social skills. So anyways, networking with people, getting to know their story. There was a piece of me where I was like, okay, this should be exposed more to people out there. And especially more so on the career side of things and what people are doing in life. I want people to be able to hear multiple stories, multiple careers, and come out of it with different perspectives, different routes to get to a certain place in life that maybe you never thought was a possible route or even a legit route out of any tense, right? I want people to be able to listen and watch and hear any type of career here. It could be unique or as maybe heard about as often as any position, such as maybe a nurse, a sales rep, right? Software engineer, a teacher, right? I want these people to be able to have a voice and talk about their experience. Not everyone has a straight shot to where they got to in life. And that's the truth. And I'm going to be covering that a little bit with my own path and what I faced and where I'm at now. And I'm very happy with where I'm at now. And this is real premise, the driver of the show. I want others to see this. I want others to hear this, to know they're not alone. If you're like me, and maybe you didn't have a straight shot to where you're at in life, career-wise, there's others like you out. There's others like you out there, and that's for sure, and that's a fact. For the ones that did have a straight shot to their career, amazing. There's nothing wrong with that by any means. You knew exactly what you were going to go for. You shot for it, and you got it. Kudos to you. That's amazing. And I want those stories here as well. I just want people exposed to so many different routes and ways of life, and to know that any of those routes can be theirs. It's not exclusive to just one person. It can be theirs. So this is the premise of the show. This is what we're going to be doing. This is what I want people to see. Multiple stories, multiple paths, to let you know that you can probably relate to more people than you think, and then give them a networking opportunity. There are going to be some that come on the show, and I would love for them to be able to network with others out there, my listeners. That'd be amazing, just because I'm huge into relationships and the power of what that brings to people in life. You know, the whole saying, well, if you know someone, or, it's all about knowing someone. I think there's a bit of validity, if not a lot of validity to that in any circumstance. So network, get to know someone. Get to know someone you never thought you'd actually have quite a bit in common with, right? So you get to hear these people come on the show, you get to hear the stories, and you get to hear a little bit about who they are, what their upbringing is. And you might go, oh, hey, I relate to this person a lot more than I thought. I want to hit them up. Maybe it's the same career I want to go for, or maybe it's the way they got to the value that you treasure the most, whether it's the money that someone's making, or the happiness they have with work-life balance, or just the passion itself out of a career that really draws to you, right? You'll have the ability to connect with them on that level. So for others, so I'm hoping that with people on the show, right? Again, it's not mandatory by no means. Sometimes just someone's story is sufficient enough to help others out, or for others to hear, right? It might just be, hey, I'm going to tell my story on this show, and if it's of help to others, wonderful, and it's fun doing the show, but that's as much as I want to do. That's okay. That's totally okay. Someone's story still unlocks a perspective for you that you may have not seen before, and it shares a whole nother feel that maybe you've never experienced, right? So that, I know this is quite a bit, and I'm trying my best to compartmentalize this so that it's a but it's a good summarized summary of what the show is. But there's just so much to this show that it's kind of hard to do that, right? But anyways, so I guess to cap it, different stories, different perspectives, different values. I love for you guys to hear that and relate that to you, whether it's in relation to you pursuing your own career in something, or just for another perspective for you to have in this life. It's always amazing to be open-minded and be able to get this experience. So I'm sure there's other podcasts that do similar things like this, or they're very specific to a certain career, like, hey, we're going to dive into sales careers. Hey, we're going to dive into professional sports. Hey, we're going to dive into computer science. This is going to be so broad. I mean, this is not specific to anything. I'm an account manager, okay? Account manager sales. And I'm going to be having people here that, as like a teacher, or another sales rep, or maybe a private instructor of sorts, right? I know I have a casino auditor coming on pretty soon, so that'll be exciting, right? And to be honest, I didn't think I'd ever meet someone who's like a legit casino auditor. So that episode will be cool. But that's what I'm talking about. Like, you're going to have a good blend of jobs that you've probably heard quite a bit about, and other jobs you've never really got a good, true experience story from, right? And you're gonna be able to hear that on this show. So to all my friends out there, and I'll probably say it again at the end of the show, if you feel like you want to share your story, you want to talk about where you're at now, and just tell others how you got there and be part of this, do not hesitate. Reach out to me. Let's do this. It's going to be a lot of fun. This show's meant to be conversational. It's not meant to be kind of in this interview prompt, nothing like that. I really want people to just feel like they're having a casual conversation with me. One that's being recorded, of course, and others are going to hear about, but I want everyone to know, like, this isn't going to be perfect, right? If one of the feelings is, oh, I'd be down to do this, I just don't know how I'd feel about being on camera, and what if I slip up and say something dumb, or, believe it or not, have to use the restroom if I've got a water. I'm just thinking we can take breaks. We can edit stuff. No one's perfect. This show is all about just being yourself and having casual conversation with me that we hope that others can learn from or get something out of, right? The whole premise of the show. So I think I summarized that pretty well. Probably a little longer than I thought I would have to. But again, there's just a lot that goes into this. And I just am really trying to drive every factor of the show that I can think about into your guys' mind as you guys are kind of like processing, like, what is he talking about and how the show is going to be. Okay. Speaking on imperfections, as you can tell, I had a good buddy of mine who actually does a lot of editing himself, does video logging. He's more of like what do you call it? Not a private, a freelancer. There it is. Sorry, it took me a little bit. But a freelance, right? A freelancer at doing videos, doing editing. Really good friend of mine who already had told me, he's like, hey, just letting you know a little bit about the lighting. If you wanted the advice, of course I want the advice. If you guys have advice for me, give it to me. I'm an open book, man. I'm not going to get hurt by feelings or whatnot. But I will ask you guys to bear with me, as this is the start of something I'm doing from scratch, right? So obviously the lighting may not be perfect, but these are things that I really hope to invest in later on because it's something I enjoy. And that's probably the biggest reason I'm doing this, is it's something I really enjoy, is talking to people, getting to know their story and networking. But now I get to do it in front of you guys. Now I get to expose these people, not expose. I don't want to use expose. I feel like expose always has some, derogatory meaning with it. I want to share these people with you. I want to share conversations with you, right? I want you guys to hear this because I want you guys to take something from it. So going back to the imperfections, lighting may not be the best. Sometimes this microphone might pick up audio from other things. Just bear with me. No one's perfect. And I'm actually excited to see from this episode how far I get and to see what changes are made down the road. Once I've had quite a bit of episodes published and I fine-tune some of my editing skills, because I'm doing everything from scratch, right? My wife helped me with the logo on this, but learning the software to record an episode, pair the audio with the video, intro, outro music, fade in, fade out. It was a bit of a learning curve for me, Thank you to YouTube and Google, where you can literally search up anything and it just gives you a tutorial and stuff. So show's not going to be perfect, but I'm excited to see how much this grows and how fine-tuned it gets later down the road. Anyways, so we talked about the origin of the podcast and what it's supposed to be about. And I hope that as more episodes come out, you'll get a clear picture of it if my explanation wasn't as clear. I know sometimes I can do a little bit of rambling. But now I want to go into just a bit about me. These are the questions that I'm going to be having my guests answer with me on the podcast. And so I figured, why not start with me, right? Talk to you about what the podcast is about, the origin, and then a little bit about me, a little bit about who I am and this multiple paths that I've taken to get to where I'm at that I've talked about, right? So in my 30s, I'm here in Arizona, and currently I am an account manager for a tech company. And when I very first started off from college, I guess I could start a little prior to that. I was actually bussing tables, like my first actual job, right? During high school, was helping bus tables for like my dad's restaurant that he was managing at that time. I worked for a small little Mexican restaurant that was right by my house in California, which, by the way, has some of the best burritos there are. So I worked there for a bit, and then actually going into college, I started working full-time my sophomore year. I went to college up in Northern Arizona, NAU, Lumberjacks, and I worked up there as a PBX operator for a hospital up there. So if you think about a big old, I wouldn't say dungeon's very dark, but just like a switchboard room, right? There's a bunch of TV monitors everywhere. There's a lot of computer screens. I'm taking in calls from family members or vendors of the hospital up there, and I'm directing them to where they need to be, right? So an operator sorts, but I'm also watching the cameras. I'm coordinating with security, our code teams at the hospital, right? For some of my nurses and doctors, PAs out there knowing about those code blues, codes. You know what I'm talking about. So I did that for a bit during college to kind of get me through my living expenses and whatever I did up there. I did that. And I've actually delivered pizzas as well. During my freshman year summer back home. I think that was the only summer I had at college back home in California. And then my sophomore year, I started that hospital job that actually went throughout the entire college tenure. So I was at that hospital for a few years until I graduated. And then when I graduated, that's when I had what I would call like my first big time job, right? One that's supposed to correlate with what you've been studying at school. And so starting this career path, I'll let you guys know right now, there's a lot of valuable things I learned from the restaurant business, even delivering pizzas, and being a switchboard operator. And I'll get into that a little later. But after college, I had my degree in a Bachelor of Science Psychology and a Bachelor of Science in Sociology. I've always been really intrigued by the human mind and the external factors that may cause some ways for someone to operate or think, right? The brain itself is the most fascinating thing to me. I mean, that's where I can really nerd out, right? So I had thought for a long time I would be a children's psychiatrist. I don't know if many of you know that. That's what I was hoping to go to school for. I wanted to be a children's psychiatrist. I wanted to work with kids. I wanted to make a difference. And that didn't really pan out that way. I had my internship my senior year, and I had a good clinical experience that I got to do through a local mental health center up there. And I'm so appreciative of that agency and the director who was working with me at the time, my mentor. She was awesome. But I just realized it wasn't for me. And I kind of went through a little bit of like I wouldn't call it like a mental crisis, but maybe an identity crisis in sorts of careers, if that makes sense. I don't really know how to describe this, but my sophomore year, doing these clinical rounds or this clinical experience at the latter part of my senior year. And then I realized I can't do this. It wasn't anything that I didn't want to work with kids. I'd love to work with kids. They're great. They're funny. They're awesome. And being a kid, it's such a pivotal time for them. It's such an important time for them to really understand different things in their life and what's going to shape them, right? So that's what I really want to do at first was just like, I want to be there during that time to help out, especially the ones that don't have it easy and are going through things. But my experience kind of carried with me emotionally. And when I say that, I mean, some of these kids I started working with through my clinical experience, this clinical internships of sorts that I had, it was rewarding to see some of these kids so happy to be able to do these different types of groups and sessions with them, obviously supervised. But it was tough. It was tough. It was really tough to see some of the environments that some of these kids would go home to or what they grew up around for such a long time. I give such kudos to the people that work with children today. I'm talking about teachers, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, school counselors. You guys are amazing. If there's anything that drew more of a picture of how important those positions are in today's world, and I don't mean to miss out on other ones that deal with children development. Obviously, I hope you guys know this goes to anyone who works with children, who raises children. Okay, so just children in general, dealing with children in general, it is such an important job, and one that I don't know, especially the ones that work with children, how they can do it sometimes. And a lot of kudos to them, because I'm telling you, sometimes when you see the work that you've done and then you kind of have this, it's going to sound a little dark, but it's a reminder of where they're going back to or what they've just known for so long, and that you're really just, hitting the tip of the iceberg, can be a little defeating. And for me personally, just me personally, right? I've always known I wanted a family, and I want to be able to be present with my family later in life. And I just, at that time, I already thought, like, I don't think this is something I can do if I go down this path. I think it'd be rewarding in one sense, and it might affect my personal life in another, right? I got attached. I did. And so, I was very straight with my director about it and my experience, and she was awesome. Super awesome. It's my mentor here. And she said, hey, why don't you come work at this rehabilitation program that is set for addiction, right? Drug addiction, at this mental health agency in Flagstaff, as my job. Try it out. Why not try another mental health field? I still wanted to help people, right? It wasn't children. It was going to be in a lot older audience. But at that point, I wanted to help people and I didn't know what I was going to do next. So I said, all right, let's do it. Right. So I became a case manager. And this is where I really start to understand what I'm wanting in this life and what I'm figuring out to what I want in this life. When I took this case management position, it was extremely rewarding and extremely tough. Anyone who works in the mental health space, I'm sure, is nodding their head going, I know exactly what you're talking about, Way. I know exactly what you're talking about, right? You're talking about the most amazing feeling when you've got a good success story or someone's telling you, hey, I'm doing much better. I'm instilling these type of things that you guys taught us, and we're doing much better in life. Or I'm doing much better now, even in the program, right? And then you got the other side where some people are coming fresh off addiction and it is rough. And for people who have battled through addictions, I'm sure you probably agree with it, being like, oh yeah, I'm not the best person when I just first start recovery, right? So you get you get those two worlds. And I got such valuable experience from that position. Case manager for a 12-bed unit. Okay, so this is a 30 to 60-day program that I was in charge of doing, helping out programming and then focusing a lot on the aftercare piece. And aftercare means sober living homes, if we're able to get them assigned to one, making sure that they've got good outpatient programs so that they have structure, so that people have structure when they leave the program, right? Those are kind of my priorities. And I would work with our outpatient team, outpatient services, sometimes our psychiatric acute unit, which was a whole nother world. It was an amazing experience too, and I helped out there. And then our crisis team. I almost blanked on that, the crisis team. And those are the ones that take in people who come in any time of the day, any time of the night, where they're going through maybe an episode or they're needing help, or maybe some individuals who have prescribed medications they run out, so maybe they're having a little episode of their own. So I worked with all these teams to make sure that sometimes we have candidates that came through our other services that need to go to inpatient, so we would work all together. And then of course I'd have my referrals from other outside agencies. So this was a pretty unique job. I was helping others out. I really got to do client care, face to face, and it was really cool to do that. The burnout, though, happens really quick in that position. And then, especially when you realize those people don't make the most money. And there's nothing wrong. I take that back. Those people in the mental health field deserve way more than they're making. I'm a big advocate for that. I'm a big believer of that. You guys are amazing and you guys do such awesome work, and the work can be really grueling. And it's not that it's not grueling because you have to work with people. It's not that, right? Or the hours. It's just the type of care that you're giving. And you're working with people every day. You're working with some of the hardest population to work with, especially when they're just starting recovery. Okay. There's a lot of deceit and manipulation, and it's not really that person, it's the disease speaking. Okay. But nonetheless, burnout happens really quick there. And then if you're not making the most money, it's just everything gets really frustrating. Some are okay with the money they make there, and that's beautiful. That's great, right? That's a whole nother perspective I'm talking about. Something that's not me, but there are other people that money isn't valued that high, and that's okay. Look, if you're living this life happy with what you're making and what you're doing, beautiful. You don't got to change that. But for me personally, money was important, and I have my reasons for that. I don't want to go through struggles. I don't want to go through hardships. I don't need to, me personally, experience that. And I don't want that to be experienced by anyone that, at this point, it's more future speaking, when I would have family and I'd find a wife at that point, right? Still single back in the day, when I was up in Flagstaff. But anyways, that was my thinking. I was already kind of thinking in the future of that. And I'm like, wow, I'm working a lot of hours, because I would pick up overtime hours too. And that's a whole different conversation. Overtime hours in the mental health field is crazy. I get the whole aspect of you're not making so much, so you do time and a half and you keep making your money. But the mental health field, that could be really tough. Oh my gosh, really tough. And then affects client care, patient care. It really does. I was talking to a good friend about this, who also worked in that space. And, she would tell me it's kind of defeating sometimes when, and almost a mixed feeling when you have someone who would pick up an extra shift and maybe they've already worked, 50 plus hours that week. And these can be long shifts, and then they pick up another shift to help out, but then you notice how they are at work, and it's not necessarily their fault. I mean, I guess you can say, well, their awareness wasn't there if they're so burnt out and they're just picking up hours and then they're not really being present there. But it's this mixed feeling of like, thanks for helping us out, but also you're costing us the care of the people that have entrusted their health with us, and we're not following through on taking care of them and giving them the proper care, giving them the proper attention. People can feel that. You know that. Everyone knows that. The moment that you show someone that you don't really care much, and that can be just in a conversation real quick, something changes in you, right? Very similar to the people in these programs. So, sorry, I'm going to go on some tangents sometimes, and that's okay. That's what we're going to do on this show regardless. So, but anyways, I picked up overtime, did hours. So I was burning myself out quick. And I realized the money's not lining up. For people wondering, well, what do you talk money-wise? Flagstaff can be pretty pricey to live up there. Also, depending on like what you're doing up there, right? And I was making, I think, 36 coming out of college, and that was pretty rough. I was renting for a bit with a couple of roommates up there for a while, and I just realized like the money wasn't making sense for me on the stuff that I was doing up there. I love that agency. So for the ones that know what I'm talking about, I'm not going to be so specific with agency names and organizations. That's just my own preference. But if you're up in Flagstaff, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so for the ones that are listening to the show that were part of that journey, that also worked with me up there, you guys are amazing. I hope all of you are doing so well. And I'm really fortunate to have stayed in touch with a good chunk of those people. So you guys are doing amazing work if you continued in that field. If you didn't, I don't blame you. I get it. But anyways, so 36,000, I'm not making much. And I just feel like I'm always strapped on money and like want to do things, and I'm working a lot, and I just wasn't happy. And I just was like, I don't think this is for me. And that's when I started kind of piecing together things that people would tell me, right? Hey, why don't you get more into business? You've just got such a personality about you that screams that. The amount of times that someone would tell me that, I don't know if I'd necessarily be a millionaire, but I'd have quite some money. I would have quite some money for the amount of times that I heard that saying and someone tell me that. And I think I got scared at that point thinking, how am I going to make a leap into business coming from the mental health field? I have no experience with actual like account management. I remember trying to be like, okay, when I realized like it was time to go, right? I was like, okay, I'm going to set my resume up, and case management should be kind of close to account management, right? No. I tried my best to frame some things, but it wasn't. Account management, and especially now, I feel more days account management based on the business, obviously, in the field you're in, but it is a little bit more salesy than just maintenance of accounts, right? There's a good chunk of that. Obviously, that's your main important role, but there's a bit of sales in that as well. So not having any direct correlation to sales, all I really had was, I do know how to make sure that our census at that agency was filled. I knew how to network with referrals and make sure that other agencies felt 100% comfortable and safe knowing that any referrals that were sent to us were dealt with carefully and thoroughly. And I had a good way of implementing a system to make sure that when we had people ready to graduate from our program, we had someone else coming right away, right? That's what I knew. And looking at that now, and I mean, I knew this back then too, and I had really deep, when I had it's late. When I dove deep into this, I realized, okay, networking, working collaboratively with people and building relationships counts for something there. So though I got so discouraged and I realized none of my actual work kind of was in direct relation to the numbers games and how many accounts did you manage and, you know, what was the gross profit or the revenue that was made each quarter I didn't have any of that, but I did have what I had, and I knew that was a starting block to something. Or I thought. I kept that with me, but I obviously got scared and I applied and didn't hear anything. And I said, all right, well, I guess business isn't for me, but I'm doing really well at this agency. And in fact, I'm really proud and I was really happy to be part of being able to expand that rehabilitation program. We went from 12, 14 beds to 26 beds. We converted another unit that we had called our alcohol stabilization unit. It was for temporary, for people to sober up a bit and then kind of get set on a treatment plan outpatient wise or an inbound referral to inpatient. But only having 12 to 14 beds, we didn't necessarily always have the space. But I started getting together a system to where we could create space. And next thing you know, we're getting more referrals, we're getting more people. And it's weird to say referrals, right? Referrals in terms of like, what are you saying, Way? Like people, there's more people out there getting sick and whatnot. Like we would hope that would slow down. Of course we'd hope that would slow down, but a lot of people need help. And I'm just really thankful that these other agencies around us saw us as a great, reliable agency to do this. So the beds got filled out more, right? And then next thing you know, our agency sees the ability to double it. And now we're at 26 beds. And so we built the program, made it bigger, and it was amazing. And I was really happy to be part of that. So there were things that I carried a lot from there that I know now has really has carried with me to where I'm at in life now, because those were the basic building blocks of what I'm doing now in my career, right? But at that time, I wasn't getting applications. I wasn't getting application hits, right? You know, no one was getting back to me, and I said, okay, maybe this isn't the path, but what do we do now, right? You know, I still want to help people out. You know what? Maybe I should be a doctor. I thought I wanted to be a doctor when I was a lot younger. Actually, there were two positions I had thought I was going to be when I was growing up, when I was little. I thought, okay, I'm either going to be a doctor or a lawyer. And that could just be also the very Hispanic thing of parents, right? That my fellow Hispanics out there know when the first things of a job come down, the parents say, all right, doctor, lawyer of that profession, right? Like, go do something huge. No, in all honesty, my parents are always supportive of anything I ever did, so I love them for that. But at that time, those are two things I was looking at, and so I thought, hey, I'm in the mental health space. I actually got to meet a lot of doctors. They're awesome, amazing, and maybe I couldn't be a children's psychiatrist, but maybe I'll just be a general psychiatrist or be a doctor, general practicing, right? And so, believe it or not, I went back to school. For some of you who are Facebook friends with me, you may have remembered a post that I put. It was this Billy Madison scene. And for all the people who've watched Billy Madison, Adam Sandler movie, there's a scene where he's back in school and he's in this like chemistry class and he's like pulling out a shoe out of this like bucket thing that I don't know what they're doing, but he pulls out a shoe and people are astonished. And so I used that picture of that scene to announce to everyone, hey, your boy's going back to school. I'm going to be a doctor. And that didn't really go as planned. I did a semester of the prereqs that I needed to start kind of building my CV to apply to med school, and I did one semester of that because remember I went to school for my bachelor's in psychology and sociology. It's a lot of papers. I wasn't really doing math, biology, and chemistry, and I started doing that. And I don't really have an issue with school as much. Like if I really apply myself, I'm good to go. My little brother is the brainiac of the family, and he's going that route. He's going to be a PA, so really proud of him. But that just wasn't me ultimately. I enjoyed biology, wasn't the best at chemistry. Physics, yeah, forget about it. There was no shot. There was no shot with physics. I have to laugh because that was probably the one class I had thought, oh man, this is going to be awesome. I'm actually really excited to learn about physics. And I remember telling people that did that had taken physics, and they're like, what is wrong with you? Like, what, are you serious? Like, okay. Yeah, no, I learned quick. It just wasn't for me. And so I did that semester, and I said, okay, yeah, this isn't going to work. And that was a bit discouraging. I'm not going to lie to you guys. To call my parents and be like, yeah, so I paid for more schooling and it didn't work out. And I'm sure there's a bit of excitement thinking that like, oh, my boy's going to be a doctor. Amazing. Good for him. But what I really loved when I told my parents that like I wasn't going to go that route, I was expecting some sort of, oh man, you're quitting already. It was none of that. In fact, my dad had told me, you know, Mijo, if you know what you got to do it. And we're always going to be proud of you. So I take that to heart. That was definitely a moment for me where I said, you know, I'm going to figure this out for sure. And I just know I've always got the support of my biggest hero, which is my dad. And I love my mom too. Very supportive of it. Very supportive of me always. So that was awesome. I'm telling you, the call that I had made to tell them that I wasn't going to be doctor anymore, I had a bit of anxiety for sure doing that. I just didn't want to let anyone down. But I couldn't let them down because they were already proud of me, and they knew I was willing to get out there, grind. My work ethic has never been something in question. I've always been a hard worker, so they knew I was going to be okay. So maybe I just needed that assurance from them, and I got it. I wish I told you that was the point where I was like, oh yeah, I got it. Here it is. I fought where I'm at now. And it still wasn't. After that, I said, you know, I still want to help others out. And I know he wouldn't mind me using his name, so I'm just going to say it. To my friend Phil out there, he's a firefighter of the Phoenix Fire Department. Thank you for hearing me out at that time when I said, hey, I think I'm going to be a firefighter. And he was awesome. He spent a lot of time to talk me through the process, what I should expect, what I got to do. And I remember even talking about like, oh, I got some stuff for you if you need it when the time comes. It was awesome. He was such a great help in that. And even him, you know, when I told him I was going to go down this route, he's kind of like, man, I was excited for you to do this, you know, and be part of the, you know, be a firefighter as well down the line. And, but you know, he knew, hey, you got to do what you got to do. So Phil, I appreciate you a ton, buddy. I know I spent quite a bit of your time thinking I was going to do that, talking through that. I even took fire hazard classes, and I don't know if they're called fire hazard, but I'm pretty sure because I took them. And I took EMT classes. It was a hazard of some sorts, but I got to learn all the symbols on the back of propane tanks and or trucks that have to carry those big old propane tanks, or not propane, whatever those trucks are. You get what I'm saying. I got to distinguish what kind of chemicals and how dangerous they were, right? The numbers and the symbols. So I took that in Flagstaff, and then I took an EMT class, and look how deep I was getting into that, right? And then I said, okay, I can't be a firefighter in Flagstaff. I want to go down to Phoenix and do it and be with a lot of my friends out there. So then I moved down to the Valley in 2018. I moved in with one of my best friends, and that was a whole awesome part of my life that I got to experience living with my best friends down in the Valley, in Peoria. Shout out to the Lion's Den. Y'all know who you are. But I was like, okay, I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to try to go to, I think it's the PV Fire Academy, and start working my way on the wait list to get on with fire. And at the time I thought, okay, money's not bad, right? Again, here comes the money piece. And this is kind of correlating everything and kind of like what I value. And I'm not trying to make it sound shallow, but like money is a piece of it, right? Like there's a standard that I'd like for my life and there's nothing wrong with that. So money piece for me made sense. You can work overtime and I'm helping others out. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like this is it. This is what I'm gonna do. And I was like, man, but to do the fire academy, like I need an actual job too to supplement my living. And it's so crazy. I had reached out to a couple people who were working with me at the mental health agency in Flagstaff. Excuse me. At the mental health agency in Flagstaff that were doing the same type of work down in the valley. Okay. So there are a couple agencies down here in the valley. And I said, okay, I'm going to hit them up and see if I can get a job there, do a couple hours that way, work hourly, and then work it around the academy schedule. And that didn't pan out. It was crazy. I had case management experience at that time for that rehabilitation program for addiction. And then I actually worked, I had some experience working in the psychiatric acute unit as well when they needed some help, and that was fun. And then I didn't necessarily work for that department. I worked with them and worked there sometimes when things were a little slower with the rehabilitation program that I worked with or that I worked for, because they're all in the same building, the same complex. So if you're wondering, like, what are you talking about? They're all part of the agency. And then I was a mental health crisis worker. So I was one of those people I was talking about that worked primarily evenings, which was super fun. Fun when I say just you got a lot of experiences that happened, right? A lot of people that were in these crisis states, and you have to navigate a conversation and an assessment through with them, and everyone was different, which really helped my people skills, I think, to this day. But I carried a lot of that experience, so I thought it was more than enough to get a job as a behavioral health tech somewhere. I didn't get any hitbacks. Maybe just I was not the best at resumes, but I put my resume on Indeed, and I did get it wasn't a recruiter, he's a director at that time, but he reached out to me, and this started the healthcare journey that I started working for this agency before this job that I have now as an account manager at this tech company, right? It was a healthcare company that did nursing services at home for pediatrics, for children that were mainly coming from PCH. And it was the first sense of like a business job I ever got. I remember I got an email from this director. He said, hey, we think you'd be great. You're bilingual and we need someone to be I can't believe I'm blanking on the title, but it was a client services manager, right? And so I had said, okay, I'd never heard of this company. To be honest, I got kind of scared when I got that email because I was like, is this company legit? I actually had a couple of my buddies look it up with me. I'm like, oh yeah, it is. Okay. It's in Scottsdale. Or at that time, I think it was in the Biltmore area. And then we eventually moved to North Scottsdale, the office. But I was like, okay, this healthcare company is legit. They want me to come interview. Let's see how it goes. I did that interview and I fell in love with the place. I fell in love with the vibe of the office. And just that energy, everything clicked for me. And for the people that have heard this story and for the things that were going on in my life, like when I exactly like that, oh shit, like you saw the light in my eyes when I'm telling you this story about I just feel right. This feels great. This feels perfect. This is me. When I got into that office to do the interview, I am seeing some TV screens on with like Sports Center and stuff. It's not meant for you just to watch all day, right? But it's there in the background, right? Because you have recruiters on the phone talking to nurses, talking to potential candidates, right, coming to work. You've got the client service managers who are talking at that point to their nurses that they're working with, the families. It's pediatric home healthcare. Sorry, I should have said that. For anyone I bet you a lot of my nurse friends out there who are like, oh yeah, I know exactly what that's about. It's actually one of the first jobs you can really get out of nursing school. That's relatively a bit easier than applying for the hospital. But if it could be, could be a little more complex, right? Like you are literally dealing with a medically fragile child. And that's a lot of pressure sometimes. Okay. So, Anyways, so for those nurse friends, they know exactly what home health care is. And so I worked for a company that did home health care like that, right? But I'm in this office and just, it was great. I just loved it. I had joked around with a buddy of mine after the interview and I said, it kind of felt like like what I would see in movies of like people in these like stock exchange places where they're like, sell. They're obviously not selling or buying anything, but just like, there's a lot of chatter everywhere. And for some people are like, yo, I'm overwhelmed. I'm not. I love that. That energy made me so happy. I was like, this is the place I need to be in. So I did the interview and I remember and by the way, I'll tell you this part of my life right here, I probably had the most amount of personal and career growth I think I've ever had. And I'm still learning in this job I'm in, of course, and I still have plenty of years in my life, but I just, at this point in my life, I am so thankful for that healthcare company. And I'm sure there's plenty of you on this podcast and being like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Way. I love you guys. You guys are awesome. You guys have been huge for me in just my growth and personal career. Thank you. Probably some of the best people I've ever worked with was at this company. And I still stay in touch with quite a bit of them too. In fact, I hope to have a couple of them on this show. So we'll see if they, I'm sure they'll be on here, but thank you guys. You guys have been awesome. And that's what I fell in love with that job. The people made that company. And so sorry, going back to tell my buddy about like how I felt at this interview when I got to see the office and everything. It was just thriving. And so I was telling him, it's funny, at the end of the interview, they had asked me at that time, okay, hey, we like you. We want to offer you the job. It's just right there, right? Everything went well with the interview, the tour. And it was kind of just like, I felt at that point, the director in charge and administrator felt that I was a good fit. I felt I was a good fit for them. But one of the greatest recruiting tips I actually learned was from that interview. And that's how you know when someone's really, for all the recruiters out there, really someone's about the job. I'm eager to have it. And I tell them, yeah, I'll take it. Let's do it. Right? Like we'd barely touch salary and all that. I was like, yeah, no, I want to be here. Let's do it. This is me. And this guy says, well, hold on a bit here, right? Think about it. I'm going to give you the weekend. We want you here, but think about it. And if you still want this job, call me Monday morning at this number, right? And I'll tell you guys, I didn't realize how something that tiny to all my recruiter friends could make a difference, right? Because I did a little recruiting too when I was there because I wanted to know so many different aspects of the job that I did a little recruiting on nurses too. And that was great. That was a good experience for me. And I'll tell you, that little tidbit right there is so massive because there's so many people that you get to see and experience that are maybe like me, who are super excited, like, yeah, I want to do this. And for some of those people, they don't want to actually go through with it at the end. I don't know what it is. They get like super excited about the thought. And then right after they're like, oh yeah, I don't want to do this. And then as a recruiter, that sucks for you because then your candidate who you're excited about and you thought they were excited about you is now not really wanting to do it. And then you have one just kind of fall off, right? And then you're like, oh man, that made me feel so dumb as a recruiter. It happens. But I remember calling that Monday morning right at that time. And I said, they didn't answer. I'll never forget. They didn't answer. And I kind of like was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, I'm pretty sure it was this time he told me to call. I don't want him to think that I want this job. Like, I don't want them to go with another candidate. And so then I called back and thankfully the second time I answered and just like, oh, like all my anxiety went away. When in reality, it was probably just there on the other front on the line, but I wasn't thinking that way. And I got the job. So I did that for a couple of years and then I became a business development manager, which was great for me. It was really huge. So in my client service manager job, I'm kind of skipping over something, so I apologize, but I should probably talk to you about some of my responsibilities, right? I managed quite a bit of families. I'd want to say anywhere from 36 to 50 families that I worked with, that I was in charge of coordinating with them, a good nurse for them to fit their schedule and their acuity of care. Okay. So that was my main thing. And then to help out with the recruiters, I was also starting to dive and learn into a little bit about recruiting nurses. And I did that because it helped me understand too, what it takes to recruit someone, a good quality candidate. Okay. And that helps in life just in general. I'm sure very much my recruiter friends out there are probably, saying on whether it's on their app or their desktop or they have it on TV, on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, being like, yes, a lot of these skills as a recruiter for sure leak into your own personal life because you just get to understand screening people and vetting them. And that's just massive into who you want in your life, right? So for me, doing that recruitment process, one, I got to understand the pains and the successes that our recruiters go through, which helped me understand, okay, what really goes into pairing a nurse and a family, right? So I also did recruiting. And so I did that for a few years. And I worked with a lot of Hispanic families too, which is really rewarding. And then I got into business development manager. And so in my time as a CSM, client service manager, I'm learning recruiting. I'm learning networking with fellow nurses and families as well who'd bring on other families on services. And I'm working with other agencies again, right? I'm working with hospitals. I'm working with other agencies that help us coordinate these services. And it's still good experience for me. It's people skills, right? I mean, I'll tell you right now, in my job, I talk to adults. I mean, you're talking to adults that are in charge of their own business, right? Okay, their own entity. As a CSM, I was talking to families who entrusted their care of their child with me, knowing that like I trust this individual to give me a good nurse, right? To set up an interview with this nurse, to meet my family, meet my child, and make sure that all things are great and vetted for, because I'm trusting this person to provide me the proper care. That is a pretty tough ask because you need to make sure that you're making this family feel comfortable, right? Because you want to provide them the best care. So when people ask about like sometimes the nervousness of talking to people today that, like accounts and clients I talk to now about their own businesses and things that they may be upset with, I tell them nothing was scarier than calling a family and telling them, I didn't have a nurse for you this day or night, when they were hoping for that date night, or if they were hoping for a trip, or just some time with the other kiddos or significant other, right? Because they have a full-time job at home now too, taking care of their child and then whatever their work that they're actually doing, right? So I tell people that all the time, nothing was scarier than that. Because you feel the disappointment of the family, and then they're upset, and they're right to be upset. I was never upset that they were upset that I couldn't get them what they wanted, because like they need a break too. They just do. But so anyways, so networking with people, and then I come in business development manager, right? I'm taking this therapies division pretty much from scratch, and trying to grow it. And in that position, I'll say I didn't really have as much direction as I wish I did, but that's okay because I learned a lot from it. I learned how to be self-sufficient. I got to work with one of my best buddies, who again, that was so cool. That was such a great, and we were actually roommates for a while too. That was such a great experience, and we both helped each other learn a lot, right? Here I am learning, okay, like how do I prospect a business? How do I get a line of referrals going, right? We're just starting this pediatric therapies division. We're doing speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy. Did I say speech therapy already? All right. Well, you guys know what I'm talking about, therapies. How do I prospect a line of business from scratch? Who do I hit up? Do I just go to doctor offices throughout the valley? Do I go to different agencies that have children in their programs and try to do it there? Try to get therapies done there, right? Like all these questions are in my head, and I'm like, how do we correlate with some of the insurances and those and providers and private payers, which my buddy who I was working with did. So that's how we did it. Okay, you're the operations manager. I need you to focus on this aspect of it, and I'm going to focus on this aspect, the marketing, the outreach, the networking part of the business. Okay. So I did that, and we did really well for for our standards, for not really knowing as much, not having much direction. I thought we did really well. Him and I worked really hard to build this up. We got a recruiter. We taught our recruiter how to go about things, what to look out for. We got a director of therapies, which was awesome. Someone that can actually relate more to the therapist than we can. Look, it was exciting to have also gone through the process where I recruited a good chunk of those therapists on our staff. So I'm wearing a recruiter hat, a business development management hat, and as grueling as the work could be, sometimes the amount of hours you put into it, it really did work out for, I believe, my benefit and then my buddy's benefit as well. We just learned a lot about ourselves and what we're capable of doing. And so after doing that, that's where I finally landed at this job. After getting that experience and being able to put on my resume, hey, I legitimately did some business to business sales, right? I'm getting our services to another business and making sure that their customers or their patients, their kiddos, right, are taken care of. I was able to finally do that, right? Like I was able to finally say like I did a sort of sales of our services. And I finally got the chance at where I'm at now. And I've been going on for a while now, and I'm sure you guys are like, wow, this is kind of going all over the place, but this is exactly why I'm doing this show, right? Because there are so many people out there that have different career paths and they go one way, the other. You think of a zigzag and they finally start going towards a bit of a straighter arrow. And there's nothing wrong with that. By no means is there anything wrong with that. And so finally met the account management position, and it's my first job with commissions. And I was terrified of that leap of faith. I said, commissions, that scares the hell out of me. Like I haven't actually done like a commission job sales, a commission type sales job or account management job. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, the base salary I got, it's like, if anyone works in that position, right, in sales, you're making the most of your money of your commissions, right? And so I got to finally just dive in. I said, all right, I can't fail. Like I got to do this. And finally I'm given this chance to work in this, like now in the tech field, right? I was trying to go from healthcare to tech, and that was tough itself. And I finally get this chance, or I'm starting all the way from mental health to home healthcare to tech. I'm finally in tech. And I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that a while back, I've been wanting to get in tech for a long time. I had a couple buddies who were software engineers, product managers. I'm like, dude, how do I get into that field? It's what I wanted. And it finally happened. And I made the best of that. I made the absolute best out of it. And referencing the people skills, the networking, all that within those fields correlated to where I'm at now, right? And I'll kind of give you just a short summary on that. But I was a PBX operator, interdepartmental communication and collaboration. Okay, getting that. A case manager for a mental health agency that dealt with the rehabilitation program for drug addiction. How to talk to different people, in different states, how to mirror someone and their feelings and how far that conversation goes. That was huge, right? Being a bit loud. Sometimes you got to be loud with someone who's loud, and being a little soft with someone who is a little more soft-spoken and needs a little bit of that kind of soft style of talking. I got to learn that. Client services manager at the healthcare company. I got to wear multiple hats. And I think that was huge for me to show that I can adapt to changes quick and I can multitask on different things, right? Like I have that capacity to do that. And I learned that a lot. And then people skills still more. Right now I'm talking to families and parents and siblings, and that's all delicate conversations. So more on the people skills. And then I become a business development manager. Way more emphasis on networking, cold calls. When I'm talking about cold calls, I mean those visits. Oop, that one brightened up. Visits to the doctor's offices and agencies, right? Like I'm going in person. So when I said like, oh, like do I travel throughout the valley and go to different doctor's offices? That's exactly what I did. I went all the way from Buckeye all the way to Queen Creek. That's what I did. I would just get in my car, and during the summers, man, did it suck. I had my shirt, my tie, my slacks. Here we go. And I'd go to doctor's offices all day. Hey, I'm Wieland. We run this home healthcare therapies company. Here's my card, right? I do the whole spiel. The driving sucked, and the hot weather in Arizona during the summer, man, that was brutal. But it was still cool to network and talk to people and then build relationships and build referrals. So the networking was so huge for me on that piece, right? And talking about and crafting how I talk about the services we provide and how we get it done, right? Like, how do we solidify our relationship with you guys so that you trust us over other competitors? That was huge for me. And there were some that were exclusive relationships, which was amazing that I started. So it just taught me a lot about networking, building relationships, strengthening relationships, and how important that is, right? So you take all that, and that goes right into this job now. And then from the get-go, I start doing really well, and I'm super fortunate about it. And now this is it. This is what I want to do. Maybe that changes in a few years. I don't know. And that's okay if it changes. But right now, this is my calling, is doing account management, doing sales. This is where I have the most joy in. That I get to talk to so many people, network with so many people, make new relationships, build on other relationships, and just network. I love it. I really love it. I love talking to people. I love doing this. And the pay's great. The pay really works out to what I'm looking for. So everything's starting to pair together, right? So this is my calling. This is what I want to do, right? If you guys are wondering, as an account manager and sales rep, okay, wait, can you give us pay ranges and what that's looking like? Yeah, sales, you get paid quite a bit. Account management get paid quite a bit, right? If it's a commission structure, especially when it could be uncapped, like, it's pretty nice, especially if you can do your job well. So, because I know this is something that'll come on the podcast later on. So what are we looking pay wise? I can tell you right now that pays for what I'm doing, at least in the field, anywhere in my position, anywhere from 120 plus. And I think that's when I first was thinking about commissions. I'm like, oh man, like it's not consistent. And that scared the hell out of me, thinking it's not something that's like steady and stable, and it's kind of all over the place, but you get a groove of it. For anyone who's out there who's a sales rep or who's an account manager that deals with commissions, right? Like, you understand that you get a good grasp of it. And then it's actually not that bad. It's actually pretty stable to, if you know what kind of output of work you do. And that's what I'm crafted for more, right? Like, I want my output of work to make sense for the money that's coming back. So this job really made sense to me. And shout out to the director I spoke to at my last job at the healthcare company, who really outlined that for me and told me when I was thinking about, looking for raises and stuff. It's like, if you're looking at making X and X money, right, hundreds of thousands of dollars, that's going to be one of the sales job, which I appreciate from him, because he had told me like, hey, you need to do that. I think you'd be really good at it. And here we are. And so I'm comfortable telling you, even though that's the range in my position, it could be lower, just depending on the year that you have. But for me personally, if you want to know, I don't know what this year is going to look like. Obviously, comp plans change and whatnot. But the last 2 years, I brought in 200 plus, okay, which is amazing. Amazing for my own financial goals, for what I wanted to do, for the plans that I have, investing, clearing debts. It was great, and it made sense for me. So the work ethic was never in question, right? It just was finally getting the chance, the opportunity, and making the best of it. And just understand that, like, different routes happen, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, it's all going to come together, right? So that's kind of like my long perplexed journey. Some of you may have heard it already. Some others may be hearing for the first time. Yeah, that's true. That's what I went through. And this is why I want to do this show. There's plenty of people, I'm sure, like me, and maybe they just don't get the opportunity to hear about this as much on a platform. So let's do it. And for the ones that had a straight shot, great. Nothing wrong with that. Again, share it. Let's talk about it. I want people to have more and more perspectives. Okay. And so there's my journey, where I'm at now, what I'm making. So if anyone's interested, like, oh wow, like, is that the range? Like, how can I get into that? Talk to me. Be happy to chat with you about it. If you're looking for tips on selling or time management with this type of role, hit me up as well. I obviously want to have more people in this role, in the similar role that I'm in, also talk about their experience and what they do, because it's, again, knowledge is power. So the more perspectives, the more stories, the better. But yeah, I mean, you guys know how to hit me up on that. So, where I see myself in 10 years, this is a question I'm going to be asking on the show quite a bit. I would hope that my career's doing well still and better than what I'm doing now. Honestly, like I'd love for it to continue to grow. I'm not one to really stay as complacent, to be honest. It's not me. Like I pretty ambitious an individual, so I want to see it grow. I want to get more successful, and I want to be able to provide a beautiful life for my family, my mom and dad, for my siblings. Like I want to be able to do that. I want to, and not that they need any of my help by no means, but I want to be able to just do a lot for my loved ones. And so I want to continue to grow. I want to make more money. And I want to advance in my career, right, in different positions as well, from seniors to management and whatnot. So I hope that in 10 years, I'm doing that still. And maybe it's not sales anymore. I highly doubt that. I'm sure I'm going to stick this route because I'm really happy this route, and it's the one I'm most passionate about, and it just works well with every aspect of my life. But yeah, I hope to just continue to grow in my career, and I hope this podcast is all going. That'd be awesome. That'd be so cool. I can't imagine the amount of guests I would have in the span of 10 years. And maybe the podcast blows up a bit, which would be dope. Someone asked me, so are you trying to monetize? Like what do you want out of this? In all honesty, this is my creative outlet. This is kind of my piece, my own thing. I have plenty of friends who have their own side business. My engineering friends who got their own apps, which is badass. Some people starting their own businesses, their own clothing brands. I've got plenty of friends that I'm blessed to have around me that are doing those things. And I finally needed something for myself. And I think this is it. I think this podcast is it. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited to continue growing it. And so if I don't really make a dime at all by it in 10 years, I'll tell you what, if I'm still enjoying it, I'm still doing this. In all honesty, I'm still doing this because it's fun for me. It's fun for me to learn a new skill. It's fun for me to edit. It's fun for me to have people on, network with them. And then it really makes me happy to think it could lead to possible network opportunities for you guys as listeners, for someone that you might hear on the podcast, right? So yeah, that's where I see myself in 10 years. So if there's anything else I missed out on that I'm going to be asking other people on the show, my bad. It's my first take at all this on the first episode. But let me just say, guys, thank you so much for all of you that have stayed on, listened to this entire thing. I really appreciate your time. And honestly, your focus is listening to my story. It's really cool to put this out there. And I hope to others that it's something relatable and they can say, hey, I feel like I'm going through multiple facets of my life as well and trying to find my career. You're not alone. There's plenty of us out there. And for the ones that have more of a straight line to what they want to do, amazing. We're still out here. There's plenty of people out here for that too and support, right? Thank you guys again. This has been amazing. I just want to say one more time, literally to anyone that wants to be on the show, to anyone who wants to be on the show, hit me up. Let's do this. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. We'll get you on here. We'll share your story. If you want to network and connect people, we'll do that. But I'm really excited about it. It's all about the storytelling here, all about sharing different perspectives and giving you guys that. And it's very conversational. So if we go on tangents of things, who cares, right? Like that's what a discussion is. That's what a conversation is. Anyways, thank you guys again. Please, follow on Spotify, follow on Apple Podcasts if you're an Apple user or Apple Music user, and then YouTube. If you're not doing Spotify or Apple Music, follow on YouTube. I would love for you guys to be part of this journey as I continue doing this, be able to hear different episodes. I love any insight that you guys might have for me. Feel free to comment, whatever. But I'm excited and I'm really happy, and I'm thrilled that this is finally done. not this episode. It's not like I'm done. You know, I'm like, oh, thank God the episode's done. But I'm just happy I'm doing this. I'm really happy, and I'm excited for what this brings. So thank you guys again. Again, follow YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, or the Apple Podcast, whatever you use best. And as the outro music's going to be going on, a special thanks again to my friends over at Hannah who let me use their music. Thank you guys so much. I'm so excited for what's going to come in the future, and I hope you guys all have a good night, all right? All right, first one in the books.